Good morning. Parliament is resumed. I would invite the Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition to lead us with prayers.
Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech Thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations, for the glory of Thy name, and for the safety, honour, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign, King Charles III, William, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Parliament, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex officio members, members of the Parliament, the Chief Justice, and members of the Judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for our great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated.
Administration of oaths or affirmations.
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of messages and announcements.
None.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Report of the Standing Business Committee, fourth meeting of the 2023-2024 session of the Cayman Islands Parliament, to be laid on the table by the Chair of the Standing Business Committee, the Honourable Premier.
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the report of the Standing Business Committee.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Premier wish to speak thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, only to say that the committee, in carrying out its mandate, did meet on Friday the 20th of June 2024, Friday the 19th of July 2024, and there were two round robins that were done respectively, Tuesday the 23rd of July and Friday the 26th day of July, and it's barely in keeping with its mandate to decide the business that we're now deliberating on today. We should thank all the members of the Business Committee for making the committee's current and for the work that we get from the clerk and her other administrative staff. Thank you.
Very well.
Parliament of the Cayman Islands, Parliament Management Commission 2023 Annual Report with Financial Statements, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Premier.
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable Parliament the annual report for the Parliament Management Commission 2023 Annual Report with Financial Statements.
So ordered.
Ministry of Health and Wellness, Cayman Islands Government, the mental...
Madam Clerk, one moment. Madam Premier, would you wish to speak to the report that you've just laid?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mrs. Speaker, just to thank you for your leadership of this important committee, the Parliament Management Commission, and I would invite members to read your contribution in that of Madam Clark that's contained into the report. The committee has been making good strides towards modernization of the Parliament, and we certainly have the government's full support in that of the opposition, as we believe that Parliament is one of the most important institutions within our country, and it cannot remain in a stagnant state. So I would encourage members that if they're having any hesitancy in the creation and the operation of this important organ and institution, that they would take some time to read this very persuasive report, and I recommend it, Mr. Speaker.
Very well.
Ministry of Health and Wellness, Cayman Islands Government, the Mental Health Commission Annual Report 2022, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness and Home Affairs.
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 8A of the Mental Health Commission Act 2024, I wish to lay on the table of this Honourable Parliament the annual report of the Mental Health Commission for the period of 1st January 2022 to the 31st of December 2022.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Minister wish to speak thereto?
Briefly. Mr. Speaker, the Mental Health Commission does not have a budget, and therefore there are no financial statements accompanying this report. Mr. Speaker, the Mental Health Commission was established through legislation in January 2014. The Commission has numerous functions, such as hearing and determining appeals for numerous sections of the Mental Health Act, reviewing and advising on scopes of practice and code of ethics for practitioners, advising on mental health facilities, research and/or clinical trials in mental health, reviewing all cases for persons detained for more than 6 months, whether or not an appeal is submitted, and obtaining and compile statistics on mental health. Mr. Speaker, per the annual report, in 2022, the chair of the Mental Health Commission continued to be Dr. Mark Lockhart, who held this role since the Commission was first established in 2014. The chair was supported by Deputy Chairs Klein Glidden, Jr. and Honourable Alex Henderson, KC. The Secretary Ministry Liaison was Janet Flynn. Mr. Speaker, the Commission exceeded its requirements to meet at least 4 times a year, with a total of 11 meetings in 2022. During these meetings, the Commission engaged in meaningful dialogue and actioned its legislative responsibilities. The Commission also valued opportunities to meet with specialists such as the Disabilities Council and the Cayman Islands Insurance Association. Mr. Speaker, the Commission satisfied its requirement to provide training by completing 3 sessions with the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, totaling 24 participants. The training focused on sensitivity awareness and best practice for interacting with persons experiencing mental health illness. Mr. Speaker, the annual report also provides commentary on the status of the mental health sector. The Commission is complimentary of a number of variety of mental health services in the Cayman Islands, noting there are public, private, and non-profit organizations serving the community. However, the Commission notes that a majority of these services are located in Grand Cayman, and therefore support should be strengthened in the sister islands. The Commission notes that there has been progress on the sister islands over the past few years, and employment of a Health Service Authority resident psychologist in 2022, and a community psychiatric nurse who travels to the sister islands twice per week. The annual report also highlights Cayman's mental health helpline, rebranded to Cayman, as a great resource for the community, which can be accessed free of cost by all residents on any of our 3 islands. Mr. Speaker, Good health and well-being is the third United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, with mental health noted as an important component of overall health. Feeling mentally well allows individuals to work productively and contribute actively to their communities. Wellness is often used to evaluate a nation's level of development, as good well-being is often seen as a result of progressive, inclusive society. Here in the Cayman Islands, we are fortunate to have a range of public, private, and non-profit mental health services, as well as legal frameworks that creates a foundation upon which our nation can continue to build. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to take this opportunity to express appreciation to the Commission for their continued service to our beloved Cayman Islands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well.
National Housing Development Trust Annual Report 2015 to 2016. National Housing Development Trust Annual Report 2016 to 2017. National Housing Development Trust Annual Report 2018. National Housing Development Trust Annual Report 2019. National Housing Development Trust Annual Report 2020. And the National Housing Development Trust Annual Report 2021 to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport and Development.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Planning and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister, you can group them together as well if you wish to, rather than doing them individually.
Yes, sir, I will do that.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the National Housing Development Trust Annual Reports from 2015 to 16, Annual Report for 16 to 17, 18, 19, Annual Report for 2020, and Annual Report for 2021. Mr. Speaker.
So ordered.
Okay.
I thought you were looking for another one, sorry.
Oh, no, sir. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, honourable members of Parliament, I am pleased to lay on the table of this Honourable House of the National Development Trust the annual reports from 2015 to 21. I recognise that there has been a significant delay in tabling these reports. The reports I inherited matter that I have made much progress in fixing upon taking office and learning that these reports were outstanding. The NHDT was instructed to take necessary steps to become compliant. I am pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, by tabling these reports, the Trust is on its way towards a full compliance. I would like to thank my colleagues in Cabinet and this Honourable House for their continued support, and the National Housing Development Trust for all of the hard work that they have done, and including the new intern CEO, Mr. David Johnson, all of the team down there that's been working very hard behind the scenes to bring national housing up to date. And I know there was a time in national housing where we found that we actually had a little leg where we slowed down, but on building the homes, but this is the reason why we actually had that slowdown, is because we had to go back and clean up all of these reports that was left behind, that was not done over the previous years. But I just want to thank my team for bringing national housing up to date and for all of the hard work that they have done.
Very well.
Cayman Islands Climate Change Policy 2024 to 2050 and Cayman Islands Government to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I wish to lay the Cayman Islands Climate Change Policy 2024 to 2050.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Minister wish to speak there too?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to present to the members of this Honourable House the approved Climate Change Policy 2024 to 2050, which outlines a 26-year plan for our beloved Cayman Islands for adaptation and mitigation in order to achieve the policy's vision of a climate-resilient Cayman Islands that promotes and sustains vibrant communities, a robust economy, and a thriving natural environment. Mr. Speaker, this is a historic milestone for our country, and it comes at a time when the impacts of climate change are dominating both local and international headlines. As a nation, we have recently experienced Hurricane Beryl and witnessed the utter devastation wrought upon parts of the United States by Hurricane Helene. Even now, residents of Florida are bracing for Hurricane Milton, which has intensified rapidly into the most powerful storm of the year worldwide. As we pray for the safety of our friends and family members in Florida, our own islands continue to experience flooding and coastal erosion, which pose serious risks to our people and their homes and businesses. We know that increasingly warmer ocean waters contribute to the strength and intensity of hurricanes in our region. While we cannot prevent these severe weather events, this policy enables us to take proactive steps to safeguard and support our people, our economy, and our environment. This is why I am so proud to see this historic policy approved by Cabinet and to be able to table this document in this Honourable House today. Mr. Speaker, this is the first time that a climate change policy has been approved for the Cayman Islands. This policy, which has been worked on for 2 years by the policy team in the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency and the Technical Working Group, is a result of multi-stakeholder engagement carried out over that period, as well as building on a draft policy from 2011. The policy is also bolstered by fresh insights and circumstances that were identified in the Cayman Islands Climate Change Risk Assessment of 2022, taking into further consideration the needs of the most vulnerable in our society, such as children, the elderly, disabled, and the economically disadvantaged, as also implications for the financial services sector. The core goals of this policy are to increase resilience to climate change, to support the transition to a low-carbon economy, and to ensure climate actions are fair and take future generations into account. The approval of this policy is a testament of the incredible dedication of the Cayman Islands government, the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency, and our dedicated community who shows up to public meetings and gave their feedback on the draft policy when it went through a full 60 days of public consultation in 2023. The policy sets out clear timeframes and strategic actions which will move the country towards the policy's goals. 3 quick wins that have been identified as short-term actions, deliverable between 2024 and 2030, that will build momentum towards the policy's vision. The quick wins include identifying climate-related financial opportunities and vulnerabilities, progressing the coastal setback reference line reassessment, and implementing a national sargassum management strategy, to name a few. To ensure relevancy and flexibility, the policy will be reviewed every 2 years. This process allows the ministry to integrate updated scientific findings, climate data, and technological innovations into the ongoing implementation of the policy. Mr. Speaker, the policy is largely guided by the climate change risk assessment, which was conducted in 2022, funded through the Governor's Office by the United Kingdom's Conflict Stability and Security Fund, and following extensive desktop research, technical stakeholder consultation, and public engagement. The resulting Cayman Islands Climate Change Evidence Report 2022 is now the most comprehensive reference document to date on the potential implications of climate change on the Cayman Islands environment, society, and economy. The use of the climate change risk assessment as a guiding document ensures that the policy is grounded in the most current climate science available that is specific to our islands and our region. Mr. Speaker, the policy focuses on improving the health, safety, and overall well-being of our communities by ensuring resilient infrastructure, safeguarding livelihoods, particularly for vulnerable groups, and protecting natural ecosystems. Strategies for achieving these aims are outlined through 6 key focus areas of the policy. The first is a robust economy, which speaks to the need for economic diversification and sustainable livelihoods. The second is livable built environment, which highlights strategies for climate resilient infrastructure and planning. The third is healthy and resilient communities, which focuses on better health and safety outcomes. The fourth is resilient infrastructure networks, which speaks to the need to enhancing critical infrastructure to withstand extreme weather events. The fifth is harmony with nature, which outlines the need to protecting natural ecosystems to support a healthy economy and community. And the sixth and final focus is integration and coordination, which sets out strategies for streamlining government processes for urgent climate action. The success of this policy, Mr. Speaker, is contingent on collaboration across the government and across all sectors of our economy. Although my ministry has climate resiliency in its name, the reality is that every ministry, department, company, organization, and individual in our country has a role to play in creating a more climate resilient future for our islands. Climate change is a complex issue that requires coordinated effort across many sectors. To support this, the policy places an emphasis on cross-sectorial cooperation, engaging both government ministries and external stakeholders. This collaborative approach aims to embed climate resiliency into the national agenda. Although climate change is often thought of in terms of its environmental impacts, the impacts of climate change on human lives and livelihoods is increasingly in the spotlight. An example of this was the impact that each of us experienced with the recent flooding events that affected our homes, schools, and businesses. Climate change affects our lives, Mr. Speaker, not just our environment. That is why the climate change policy sets our strategies to support economic diversification, aiming to create sustainable livelihoods and make our economy more resilient to climate shocks. By acting now, we are protecting both the financial services sector and the broader economy from climate-related risks. Specific areas such as resilient infrastructure and safeguarding the natural environment are key to protecting tourism and other critical sectors. By reducing climate risk, the policy aims to ensure the long-term sustainability of these industries. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister with responsibility for gender affairs, it was also extremely important to me and my ministry team that the policy addresses issues of equity and inclusivity. The policy explicitly mentions the importance of addressing the needs of vulnerable groups such as children, the elderly, disabled individuals, and low-income households. Climate change risk factors disproportionately impacts these groups, and it's important that our strategies and actions take into account. Now that the policy has been approved by Cabinet and tabled in this Honourable House, the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency can continue the process of developing a comprehensive implementation plan. This will involve consultations with both internal and external stakeholders to ensure a coordinated approach. The focus will be on identifying the resources, partnerships, and strategies needed to achieve the policy's long-term goals of climate resiliency, low-carbon transition, and fair governance. One of the most urgent actions is the formation of the Climate Change Council. The Council will be responsible for the timely and coordinated implementation and review of the policy, and its functions and composition shall be set in legislation, hopefully in the near future. One of the core functions of the Council will be to promote a cohesive national response to urgent climate action set out in the policy and have oversight of policy implementation and periodic review. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the formation of the Council, the policy addresses the urgent need to secure funding and resources for the work of implementing the policy. While the policy outlines that these costs will be, where possible, absorbed by the operational budgets of government ministries and portfolios, the policy also aims to establish a climate resiliency fund through legislation to fund the timely implementation of this and future updates of the policy. Earlier this year, the Premier of the Cayman Islands, the Honourable Juliana O'Connor Connolly, wrote to His Majesty's government in her capacity as President of the United Kingdom Overseas Territories Association to advocate for increased access by the overseas territories to international climate finance mechanisms and request a focused dialogue with the territories to address these issues through the establishment of a dedicated, transparent United Kingdom climate fund for the overseas territories. The approval of this policy and the creation of a local climate resiliency fund will enable the Cayman Islands to be well placed to take advantage of any opportunities that should arise from these discussions with the United Kingdom government. Mr. Speaker, the climate change policy also provides a government framework for climate action, which includes cooperation and coordination across ministries and departments, the public and private sectors, and civil society. And I look forward to seeing this policy make a real and positive change in the future outlook of all three of our beloved Cayman Islands. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I cannot overstate the importance of the Cayman Islands climate change policy or the significance of this moment. The Cayman Islands and the wider Caribbean region have experienced more intense rainfall events and tropical storms, putting communities and critical infrastructure at greater risk of flooding and damage. Warmer sea temperatures and longer periods of drought jeopardize the health and viability of valuable, limited natural resources upon which our tourism, our food security, our livelihoods, and our quality of life all depend. Despite this, there are many opportunities to adapt to these changing conditions, building our resiliency and thriving in spite of inevitable disruptions. The strategic measures outlined in this policy aim to lower the risk that climate change poses to key sectors and vulnerable groups by reducing vulnerabilities, adapting, and embracing sustainable, low-carbon economic activities. Together, we can and will realize our vision of a climate-resilient Cayman Islands that promotes and sustains vibrant communities, a robust economy, and a thriving natural environment where people can live their best lives now and for future generations. Mr. Speaker, before I close, I want to thank my government colleagues for their support of this policy, and to my ministry team for their hard work and dedication. To the many other civil servants who contributed to the development of this policy, and to the many, many individuals who helped shape this policy through their participation in town hall meetings and industry focus groups, and providing written feedback on the policy. Today's historic tabling of the country's first national climate change policy would not be possible without all of their efforts and support. In closing, I want to encourage the community to visit the ministry's website at www.gov.ky/sustainability to learn more about the policy and to download the full document. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. A truly important, very important report and important statement. Madam Premier, we are past the hour of 11 o'clock. May I invite you to suspend standing, move to suspend standing order 23, 7, and 8 in order that questions may be put to ministers after the hour of 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I so move the suspension of Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 to allow questions to commence beyond the hour of 11 a.m.
The question is that Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 be suspended in order that questions may be put to ministers and members of the Cabinet after the hour of 11 o'clock. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 is accordingly suspended.
Questions to honorable ministers and members of the Cabinet. The Leader of the Opposition, elected member for Georgetown North, to ask the Honorable Minister of Tourism and Ports, question number 2.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 2 in my name to the Honourable Minister of Tourism and Ports, and the question reads, can the Honourable Minister provide an update on the Waterfront Tourism Experience project, including the total cost to date?
The Honourable Minister for Tourism and Ports.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer, Mr. Speaker, the total cost to date for the Waterfront Tourism Experience project is $260,562.75. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementaries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honourable Minister for that response. I wonder if the Honourable Minister would be willing to provide, as the first part of the question said, an update on the plans for the attraction centre.
The Honourable Minister to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can only answer to the member by saying that the current development plans, which is being done by DDDL Studios, is almost completed, which is the first phases of the project before any works can be constructed. I'm hoping to have the final report and design specs completed, and then I can give the member an update from there. But there's a lot more technical work that needs to be done as per the drawings and design for the site before any major works can be started.
Further supplementaries? If there are no further supplementaries, Madam Clerk.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition, elected member for Georgetown North, to ask the Honorable Minister of Tourism question number 3.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 3 in my name to the Honorable Minister for Tourism and Ports, and the question reads, can the Honorable Minister provide an update on the current state of stayover tourism, including the arrivals by month for 2023, with the monthly comparatives for 2024, and the expected monthly arrivals by year end?
The Honorable Minister of Tourism to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the answer is as follows. For the month of January, 38,446. For the month of February, 41,608. For the month of March, 57,040. For the month of April, 37,159. For the month of May, 34,882. For the month of June, 41,564. For the month of July, 38,396. For the month of August, 28,118. And though, Mr. Speaker, the month of September is completed, the confirmation or the scrubbing of the numbers have not been completed, but the estimated amounts are 13,201, and estimated amounts for October is 21,041, and for the month of November, 36,310. For the month of December, 51,895, with a grand total, Mr. Speaker, of 439,660.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Supplementaries. I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honorable Minister for the detailed numbers. Can the Honorable Minister say if they are confident that they will meet their targets for this year?
The Honorable Minister to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The simple answer, Mr. Speaker, is yes. Though we have had a bit of a dip due to the recent weather patterns and threats to hurricane, where we saw in the hurricane season a little dip lower than what we expected, but happily that we've done some positives in the earlier months to make up for those, as well as the expected positives that are projected higher than are expected to be higher than what we projected. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, the answer is simply yes, we do believe we're going to make our projected numbers. Sadly, those dips in those months has probably going to take away from the opportunity for me to say that we've surpassed our projections a lot more than projected. But as long as we meet the financial mark, that would be the most priority so we can meet our budgetary demands.
Thank you, Minister. Further supplementaries? No further supplementaries. Sorry? Oh, the Honourable Member for Cayman Brack, West and Little Cayman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise just to ask the Minister if he could give us a comparison between our arrivals to the other Caribbean island arrivals. The simple question is, they're showing growth, or are we showing growth pre-pandemic?
The Honourable Minister to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's a rather in-depth question that I would love to be able to have the details before me, but I'm not prepared for that. I can happily do the comparison research and provide for him. But I think the former minister would recognize that since the reopening of our tourism product, we have been in the positives every year since. So we have been increasing our numbers. I think the question the member may be asking is, have we gotten back to the pre-pandemic numbers of 2019? We're not quite right there yet, but we are expected to be back there in 2025, and that was suggested from within our budget contributions. I don't think there's any particular specific reason outside of the competitive nature of things, and everybody's back at the game to try to get more guests. But I don't think that we are behind in any capacity. We're taking a steady growth back to where the 2019 numbers are.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. For the supplementaries, the member for Borden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister. If memory serves me correct, the total for 2023 in terms of stayover had exceeded the budget forecast. And also, based on government financial reports, the amount of money estimated to be collected from tourism accommodation tax also exceeded the government forecast. Can the Minister tell this Honourable House roughly what was the reasons why you were able to get such favorable response for both the tourism accommodation tax and also exceed the forecast?
The Honourable Minister for Tourism to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's important that before answering the honourable member's question, and it's a beautiful question, by the way, I make some clarity to my previous statement to the former minister, which is that we have surpassed our numbers for revenue by leaps and bounds, by record-breaking numbers, I dare say, even last year and the year before that. And I've made those announcements here in Parliament before. We expect to do the same again this year and into next year. I think the question specifically, though, which is important to us all, is the numbers of visitors, because there's a difference between number of visitors and how much tax we receive from them. The other important point that may be relevant to the member's question and to the listening audience is that the value proposition of quality over quantity has succeeded in respect to the stayover component, whereby though we have not surpassed the 2019 per person numbers, we're getting more value out of each individual person than what we ever did before, which allows us to offer our product in a comfortable way while surpassing the revenues that we need from it. Mr. Speaker, now addressing the honourable member's question from Borden Town West. Oh, I apologize, member. What caused the successes of this, I would dare say, Mr. Speaker, is the hard work of the Department of Tourism, but also the policy decision that was been supported by this government to venture out into new areas, particularly that of having new routes to the Los Angeles location, to Panama, even though the Barbados flight is not continued. I think the marketing on behalf of that other jurisdiction exposed us to places that they are marketing to that we're not. And even though they were marketing our national airline to fly through the Cayman Islands, you can't say get on Cayman Airways without talking about Cayman. So a number of different initiatives of opening up to different markets, trying to diversify it, has been the benefit, and I am happy to say that the LAX flight is currently very successful, though some members were not in support, such as the Panama flight as well, is also very successful. And, pardon me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, unless there's other supplementaries, I think that would suffice for the member's question.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Any further supplementaries? The member for Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister again. I think he took 2 bites at answering my question. I'd appreciate the time that he spent with that. I just have a very simple question. There is the Caribbean region. When you look at St. Lucia, when you look at Barbados, when you look at Jamaica, Cuba, their numbers this year exceeds pre-pandemic, exceeds and shows a growth over where they were. And I think it's a fair question if the minister has any concerns about other destinations showing more growth, or if he's comfortable where we are, because we all support him and know that tourism is very important to us as in a three-island country.
The Honourable Minister to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. It is good to see our brothers and sisters in the other jurisdictions doing well. And I think that how we are growing and the pace upon which we're growing has to be determined by us here in the Cayman Islands. I think, Mr. Speaker, we recognize that we're faced with a number of issues, from population growth to housing issues, that just the mere consideration for what other jurisdictions are doing by their growth, with those growth comes other issues. We are about to have 3 major hotels open in the very near future. Will have to come with employment and revenue opportunities for the Cayman Islands. So by all means, I have no fear of the future for tourism. I am more fearful, rather than the successes of tourism, about how we manage that growth. And I think the people of the Cayman Islands would rather us do that in a measured way than only worrying about the revenue. Though revenue is important, what is most important to the people of this country is the ability to have somewhere to sleep, have food before them, not be stuck in traffic every day. So though we are progressing in a measured and monitored way, we are confident in the future of our tourism product.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Any further supplementaries? Madam Clerk.
The Deputy Leader of the Opposition, elected member for Georgetown South, to ask the Honourable Premier, Minister of Education, District Administration and Lands, and Finance and Economic Development, question number 4.
I recognize the Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Honourable Premier and the Minister of Education. Question number 4 standing in my name. Question: can the Honourable Premier and Minister of Education update the House on the current temporary arrangements for students and teachers of the Cayman Islands Further Education Centre, otherwise known as CIFEC, and the expected date for completing the permanent premises for CIFEC?
I recognize the Honourable Premier and Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank to the Deputy Premier for the question. The answer: Freudian slip. Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Current temporary provision. The students and teachers of the Cayman Islands Further Education Centre, CIFEC, are currently housed in temporary facilities at the Family Life Centre. This accommodation is currently in place until the 30th day of November 2024. The temporary accommodation provides for 16 teaching spaces, on-site meal provision, bus drop-off and pick-up, and services include security provision and janitorial provision, as is normally provided to our government schools. The technology provision has been set up and supported fully by the Department of Education Services, DES. Information and Communication Technology, or ICT team. Mr. Speaker, CIFEC and the John Gray High School, the GHS, have worked out the logistics to facilitate the use of the technical spaces to accommodate the teaching for the following subjects from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Motor vehicle, the family resource management, technical drawing, and construction. Delivery of these subjects have been initially focused on the theoretical elements to allow the school to settle into its new temporary location before transitioning to the practical elements of the course, which will commence in mid-October. DES, Mr. Speaker, through the school improvement team, is in daily contact with SciFec administration, and I am reliably informed visits the site often to ensure that teaching and learning is taking place, and regular communication channels function with the director and deputy director of SciFi to quickly remediate any issues that are flagged up, whether through the facilities unit, business services unit, or any other team within DES. Anticipated completion of the permanent location. The project team, Mr. Speaker, managing the project for the remediation of the George Hicks campus for the occupation of the site for SciFec staff and students alike, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, have advised that the work under contract has been completed and snag list items are being addressed at this time. The dates for handover of the site to DES have been adjusted from the initial date of June 2024 handover, which was communicated earlier this year. In the absence of the handover, DES was given permission to undertake trade and artisan work on the site from May 2024, at which time the scope of the additional work needed to be completed by DES was assessed. Subsequently, work commenced on some of the additional elements that were needed for full occupancy. While the full scope of the additional work, Mr. Speaker, that is required to be undertaken once the BCU inspections are complete is not yet known, the scope will provide a more definitive timeline for completion. With information ascertained to date, Mr. Speaker, it is anticipated with the known scope that remediation work will be completed by November 2024. However, with the identification of the additional works that are required after BCU inspections, the completion date will be reassessed and earlier notification provided if there is a change in this specified timeline.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Supplementaries? No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to thank the Honourable Premier, Minister of Education, for that very thorough and detailed response. Thank you.
Any further supplementaries? No further supplementaries, Madam Clerk.
Statements by honourable ministers and members of the Cabinet.
Honourable members, a whole slew of statements have been visited upon me. I have done my best to divide them. My calculation is that if all of them were to proceed, it would take about 3 hours. So I've divided them between today and tomorrow. And after discussion with the Honourable Premier, the most important ones are the statements in relation to exceptional circumstances appropriation changes in anticipation of Finance Committee. So I've decided that we'll take all of those plus a number of the other less lengthy ones this morning, and we'll deal with the rest tomorrow. Honourable Premier, I believe you have two.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Both are Section 11.5s for clarity. The first one I'll deal with, Mr. Speaker, is the 11.5 relating to the Ministry of Education. Mr. Speaker, as required by Section 11.6 of the Public Management and Finance Act 2020 revision, I make this statement to the members of this Honourable House with respect to the exceptional circumstance transactions that Cabinet approved for the Minister of Education for the period 1st January 2024 to 30th of September 2024. Such transactions were approved, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Section 11.5 of the PMFA. The statement provides details of the aforementioned transactions. TP 51, other educational and training assistance.
Madam Premier, I hate to interrupt you, but I was just going to ask if copies had been distributed to members. Being done now? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. TP 51, other educational and training assistance. Mr. Speaker, the CCC School has been undergoing serious financial challenges for some time. In 2023, the Cabinet approved a one-time grant to help alleviate the potential impact on the wider educational provision across the island of Grand Cayman. CCC School continues to face significant hardships, largely due to a decline in enrollment of over 50% compared to pre-COVID-19 figures. The school struggles to meet its ongoing operational expenses and needed capital works. Due to these extenuating circumstances that CCC School has found itself in, and considering the social impact on families that it serves, it was befitting to assist in whatever way possible. This assistance, Mr. Speaker, was in the form of a one-time grant of 400,000 Cayman Islands dollars. Therefore, approval is being required under Section 11.5 of the PMFA 2020 revision to increase TP 51, other education and training assistance, by $400,000, and this, because it was 11.5, Mr. Speaker, came from the wider CIG budget for 2024. TP 82, Special Education Needs Scholarship. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands government is committed to providing alternative placement for all compulsory age students with special education needs who cannot be accommodated currently at the Lighthouse School. This year, there were 46 such students. Based on where they have been placed, the appropriation was short of $300,682 to fully cover these costs. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, approval is required under Section 11.5 of the PMFA 2020 revision to increase TP 82, Special Education Needs Scholarship, by $300,000, $682, and decrease TP 83, Scholarships for Medical Specialization, by $300,682. Mr. Speaker, EI 12, Minister of Education, continuing. In early 2020, the first stage of the new John Gray High School project was completed, and the students could move into the new campus, Project A. The second phase of Project B was the renovations of the old school known as George Hicks campus to allow it to be occupied by the Department of Educational Services, the Cayman Islands Further Education Center, the Behavior Support Services, Early Intervention Program, ICT for the Minister of Education, and Student Services. However, Mr. Speaker, there were some critical works identified that were not captured in Project B arrangement that were required to be completed before any of the aforementioned units could move in to this renovated site. The Department of Education Services will address these out-of-scope works, which were estimated to cost $4 million. The third phase of the new John Gray High School project, Project C, involves demolishing the Cayman Islands Further Education Center and completing the John Gray High School sports fields. In 2018, the outlined business case for the new John Gray High School project was approved by the then Cabinet, which estimated Project C to cost no more than $3,074,000. However, in 2024, Mr. Speaker, when the procurement was duly completed, the estimated cost is now $6,200,000. Based on the 2024 budget allocation for the project, there was therefore a shortfall of $3 million. Approval is being sought by virtue of Section 11.5 of the PMFA 2020 revision to increase EI 12, Minister of Education, by $7 million. The decrease was taken from the general CIG budget. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me to explain the exceptional circumstances that have resulted in these supplementary appropriations being requested by the Minister of Education for 1st of January to the 30th day of September 2024. With your permission, I would move on to DAL, Section 11.5.
Yes, Madam Premier, please proceed.
Thank you for your kind indulgence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 11.5, as it relates to DAL. Thank you once again for allowing this.
Sorry, Madam Premier.
Oh, sorry.
I got a late indication that the honourable member for Georgetown East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Would like
Mr.
to ask
Speaker,
a question.
just looking for a bit of clarity here, because there are two spaces in the document here that we were given, where she mentions that the decrease was taken from the wider CIG budget for 2024. I'd like to understand what that means, because normally I would expect to see it come from a specific head of expenditure.
Madam Premier.
Basically, Mr. Speaker, based on my reliable verification, this means that it came from central funding. It was a pure, straightforward 11.5 as opposed of a neutral transfer from one head to the next head.
That's satisfactory? Okay, I thought so. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet considered and approved the following requests for Section 11.5 appropriations in accordance with the Public Management Finance Act 2020 revision by the Ministry of District Administration Lands to satisfy the 2024 and 2025 expenditure needs as follows. EA 42, Cayman Bracken Little Cayman Street Lighting. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet approved the increase to EI 42, Cayman Bracken Little Cayman Street Lighting in the Minister of District Administration by 50,000 Cayman Islands dollars via Section 11.5 to facilitate light pole installation in the island of Cayman Brac. The aforementioned increase to EA 42 of $50,000 was the result of a decrease by EI 87, Minister of District Administration Lands, equity injection of the said amount being $50,000. So it was cost neutral, Mr. Speaker. DAL 1, policy advice and support to the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet approved the increase to DAL by $40,000 in 2024 and $160,000 in 2025 via Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020 to create a new role for a senior project manager within the Ministry for District Administration, which is in dire need to manage and facilitate the timely completion of ongoing and upcoming major projects on Cayman Brac. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to explain these exceptional circumstances which have resulted in supplementary appropriations initiated by DAL by virtue of Section 11.5 of the PMFA Act 2020 revision for the years 2024 and 2025. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Premier. The Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness. Honourable Minister, I know you've submitted more than two statements, but the two I've approved for this afternoon's delivery is the exceptional circumstances appropriation changes for the 2024 financial year for the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the update on the power outage at Her Majesty Prison Northwood.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to bring to the attention of this honourable Parliament the details of the appropriation changes approved by Cabinet for the Ministry of Health and Wellness in accordance with Section 11.5 of the Public Management and Finance Act 2020 revision during the 2024 financial year. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry had two such changes during the 2024 year as follows. August 2024, supplementary funding of $10.3 million to cover HEA2, medical care for indigents, and supplementary funding of $21.2 million for appropriations NGS 55, tertiary care at various local and overseas institutions. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020, on August 8, 2024, Cabinet granted approval for supplementary funding for appropriation HEA2, medical care for indigents, as stated, in the amount of CI 10.3 million to ensure that adequate funding was made available for this appropriation during this fiscal year 2024 in order to ensure the continued coverage of approved persons under this appropriation. Mr. Speaker, also on August 8, 2024, in accordance with Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020 revision, Cabinet granted approval for supplementary funding for appropriation NGS 55, tertiary care for various local and overseas institutions in the amount of CI 21.2 million for the fiscal year 2024. To ensure that adequate funding was available for the continued coverage of approved persons under this appropriation. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that adequate funding for both appropriations is needed to prevent any disruption to the provision of these vital primary and secondary healthcare services to the people of the Cayman Islands on behalf of the Cayman Islands government. In both instances, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health and Wellness had to ensure that financial obligations to the local and overseas healthcare providers are met in a timely manner. The aim was to avoid any negative effects that could occur with the relationship to providers have with patients referred by the Cayman Islands government, thus resulting in them being denied access to critical care. This would have the potential to affect not just the indigents, but the entire civil service body and public service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to outline these various Section 11.5 supplementary funding requests which occurred during the 2024 fiscal year.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I think you have one more.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to offer a very brief statement to this honourable Parliament, the purpose of which is to provide an update as to a power outage that impacted His Majesty's Prison Northward this past Sunday, October 6th, at around 2:30 p.m. On that day, direct power supply to His Majesty's Prison Northward was temporarily suspended in coordination with the Caribbean Utilities Company, CUC. This was necessary to allow the company to perform maintenance to its transformer equipment. As such, the prison service activated its standby generators to provide power to the prison. During the process of transferring back to direct power supply, a fault occurred, which prevented restorations. Since then, CUC and the prison service have been actively coordinating to enable full restoration of power to the facility. Mr. Speaker, I commend the Director of Prisons and his team for their swift operational responses and ongoing engagement with CUC to fully restore power. It is anticipated that this process will be completed by Thursday of this week. In the interim, the prison service will continue utilizing its standby generators to power the facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Minister. The Honorable Minister of Border Control, Labor and Culture has a short statement. Or perhaps if he isn't quite ready, I can call on another minister.
Mr. Chair. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. I'd originally asked for this to be deferred, but since you called on me, I'll do the noble thing and respond.
Usually I get chastised for not calling on ministers, but please carry on.
Mr. Speaker, while we understand the social, economic challenges that have impacted many countries around the world, including our islands as a result of the effects of the monetary policy of the United States to fight against inflation and to restrict fiscal support to ease inflationary pressures, it is imperative to understand the immediate need to modernize our employment standards to ensure that all employees benefit favorably in these islands. As our islands continue to perform favorably, despite the current economic climate, we must address the social and economic imbalance of our people's legal rights and entitlements in respect to their employment by making the necessary legislative changes to improve their well-being and dignity. The entitlements that we intend to propose are to increase employee benefits for pregnant women, mothers, and fathers relative to parental and adoption leave, including improvements to vacation leave and overtime pay entitlements. These proposed changes aim to enhance the legislation to align the local employment standards with that of the civil service of the Cayman Islands government and international standards of the labor reform enforced by the International Labor Organization to remain competitive in this fast-paced global landscape. Mr. Speaker, there are other key recommendations to improve the legal employment requirements for all employees. Of those legislative changes, we must address the needs of all employees to receive their employment contracts within 10 days from the date of their employment. We must address the need for employers to retain accurate employee records, for example, records of the hours worked, leave taken, and wages and salary paid for all employees instead of 10 or more persons employed as stated in the current Labor Act legislation. The need for employers to keep employee records for a period of 5 years as per the National Pensions Act rather than 2 years as stipulated under the Labor Act. The need to permit for the order or cost legal fees to be recouped by complainants and or appellant for cases.
Complainants.
Yes. Just said it a little fast. For cases favorably won in legal proceedings before the Labor Tribunal and Labor Appeals Tribunal, the need to grant the Department of Labor and Pensions the regulatory power to issue administrative fines to non-compliant employers that have breached the labor legislation, and the need to complete immaterial legislative changes for clarity of the labor legislation. In closing, I speak for my colleagues and I reiterate the Cayman Islands government is confident that our approach will further help strengthen our economy to ensure that our people benefit from our prosperity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport, and Development, you have 5 statements, all relating to Section 11.5 approvals by Cabinet, which would need to be dealt with by Finance Committee when it meets on Friday. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise this Honorable House to report on an approval of Cabinet pursuant to Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020 revision, that this approval concerns the reallocation of funds for the creation of a swimming hole area in the eastern public beach of Collier's Public Beach. The approval will see a transfer of $140,000 from the financial year of 24 to EI 86, the Ministry from EI 86, the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Heritage of Financial 24, to the EA 168, Infrastructure and Development in the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, Transport and Development. Mr. Speaker, I rise before this Honourable House to report the approval by Cabinet and pursuant to 11.5 to the Public and Management Finance Act, and that the approval will allocate the funds of the rebuilding of a dock at the Heritage Public Beach in East End. Specified details for the approvals are the transfer of $250,000 from the financial year 24 from EI 86 of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Heritage to the financial year of 2024 to EA 168, Infrastructure and Development, and the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture and Infrastructure, Transport and Development, and 2, transfer the $250,000 from financial year from 2025 to EI 86 from the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Heritage from the financial year of 2025 to the EA 168, Infrastructure and Development, from the to the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, Transport and Development. Mr. Speaker, honourable members of Parliament, on the 8th of July 2024, under Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020 revision, Cabinet approved $250,000 in supplementary funding for Hurricane Barrel preparations and recovery efforts. This will see an increase in the transfer payment of $76 in assistance and infrastructure development by $250,000 for 2024 financial year. Mr. Speaker, honourable members of Parliament, on the 20th of August 2024, under Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act, Cabinet approved the transfer of funds within the 24-25 financial year appropriation of the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport and Development. This will see a reduction in the Ministry's of PI's appropriation from 2024 financial year of EA 168 Infrastructure Development by $500,000. Likewise, this will also see an increase in PI's appropriation for the financial of 24 for the TP 76 for the assistance for the infrastructure and development by $500,000. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 11.5 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020 revision, Cabinet approved the increase of $5 million in the 2022 financial year for the funding of major road expansion projects. Expenditures for the EA 148, this will see a total disbursement of $19 million from the Infrastructure Development Fund. The necessary adjustments will ensure that our road infrastructures and projects remain on track despite the project's financial shortfall. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That concludes the statements for today. Madam Clerk.
Personal explanations.
None.
obituary and other ceremonial speeches.
Honorable members, it is my solemn duty to pay tribute today to a giant of our community, the late Mr. Morgan DaCosta, a friend and a brother. I believe you would all agree that in commemorating him, we are remembering not just a man, but a force, a cultural beacon whose influence will echo in the Cayman Islands for generations to come. His loss is felt deeply throughout our islands, but of course, his legacy will endure through all aspects of Cayman's arts and cultural communities, and for those who hold him dear. Morgan DaCosta was not just a name we knew. He was a spirit that infused every corner of Caymanian life with vibrancy and soul. His contributions were woven into the very fabric of our culture through the arts, music, theater, and his unwavering dedication to our community. He was not content to merely witness the evolution of Caymanian heritage. He shaped it, nurtured it, and ensured that it blossomed for future generations. As a board member of the Cayman National Cultural Foundation for over 2 decades, Morgan cherished Cayman's past and what it is that makes us such a unique and blessed country. He respected it, protected it, and championed it. But he also forever had his eye on the horizon, on the future of Cayman's cultural landscape. For him, heritage was not simply a memory, but a living, breathing entity, one that he fiercely protected while encouraging it to grow. It was a bridge between generations, between the old and the new, reminding us all that our roots are the source of our strength, and that artistic expression has no time limit. And his legacy can be seen all around us in the rich development of Cayman's programs and events that spark generations of artists and creatives to pursue their craft. An icon for Cayman's cultural landscape, Morgan brought his unique spirit and vitality to our community in ways words often cannot. But Morgan's contributions went far beyond his work. His heart was as large as his talent. He was a man of boundless joy, and he dedicated himself to giving back to this community that meant so much to him. He knew that culture is not a luxury, but the soul of a nation, and he spent his life safeguarding that soul. Honorable members, today we grieve not only for a life lost far too soon, but for a light that shone so brightly in our midst. Yet even in our sadness, we take solace in the fact that Morgan's light has not gone out. It lives on in the programs he helped to create, in the generations of Cayman's creatives who are finding more and more opportunities and resources to develop their craft, and in the countless lives he touched. The Cayman Islands are undeniably richer for his presence, and his spirit will forever be a part of who we are as a people. To his widow Jocelyn, his daughter Kelsey, and his young son Hart, his dear mother Miss Jeannie, brothers Jean and Oscar, to Wade DaCosta and all of his beloved cousins, his friends, and to all across the community who had the privilege of knowing Morgan, we extend from this Parliament our deepest and heartfelt sympathies. No words can truly soothe the pain of his passing, but I hope all of you who suffer this loss will find comfort in the knowledge that Morgan's legacy is eternal. His love for this land, his commitment to our culture, his support of Cayman's artistic talents, and his passion for uplifting others will be remembered, honored, and celebrated for years to come. Let us not only remember Morgan DaCosta as a cultural icon, but as a man who loved deeply, who gave selflessly, and who lived passionately. He represented the very best of the Cayman Islands, and his legacy will forever inspire us to do the same. Though he is no longer with us, his spirit will remain a guiding light for all of us, showing us the way forward, rooted in the beauty of our past. May his soul rest in peace. Honorable members, I also wish to say a few words to acknowledge another loss for our country. One who was not born here, but who without doubt was of this place. The late Mr. J.C. Calhoun, a visionary leader and cherished member of the Cayman Islands community, and whose recent passing leaves a profound void. As a co-founder of the Cayman Islands Real Estate Brokers Association, or CEREBA, JSC dedicated over 4 decades of his life to shaping the landscape of real estate in our islands. His dedication helped transform Cayman's real estate landscape into a thriving and respected industry. I knew him for over 50 years, and I personally mourn his passing. Beyond his professional achievements, JC's legacy is equally defined by his deep commitment to philanthropy and his tireless efforts to uplift the youth of our islands. He believed strongly in the importance of community, and his generosity reached far and wide. Whether through supporting educational initiatives or investing in programs that empowered young Caymanians to succeed, JSC was always driven by a desire to create opportunities for the next generation. His contributions extended beyond business, touching the lives of many people who will forever be grateful for his guidance and support. Particularly, his work, his efforts, his drive, his passion to create the field of dreams which allowed the development of softball in these islands is something which many, many Caymanians, young and some not so young anymore, will forever be grateful for. As we mourn the loss of this remarkable man, we celebrate a life filled with service, leadership, and an unwavering love for the Cayman Islands and its people. His legacy will endure not only in Cayman's real estate industry that he helped build, but also in the many lives of those he touched through his generosity and mentorship. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family, loved ones, friends, and to all those who are dealing with this loss. Honorable members, I also wish to pay tribute to another Caymanian icon and someone who I've also known for most of my life, Mr. Kent Eldermeyer, whose impact on our community is immeasurable. Mr. Eldermeyer was a true pioneer, and his contributions to Cayman's international reputation cannot be overstated. A founding member and past president of the Cayman Islands National Water Sports Association and the Maritime Heritage Foundation, Kent's passion for the ocean and his dedication to developing our diving industry helped establish Cayman as a world-renowned destination for diving and water sports. Mr. Eldermeyer was more than a dive legend. He was a visionary leader who worked tirelessly to promote safety, innovation, and excellence in the water sports community. He was also instrumental in implementing our treasured marine parks, and it was this love for the sea and our marine environment that leaves a lasting legacy for the benefit of our islands. As we remember Mr. Eldermeyer today, we join in a wide community in mourning the tremendous loss, but also in recognizing his remarkable achievements. We also celebrate his values of leadership, service, stewardship, and the care that he embodied. On behalf of this honorable House, I extend our deepest sympathies to his family and loved ones, his friends, and to the global diving community. We are forever grateful for his passionate commitment to our beautiful islands. May his legacy live on in the waters that surround us and in the hearts of those who knew him. Honorable members, at this point, I will invite those of you who wish to say something, either in relation to any of those that I have eulogized, or indeed any other persons in the community who have gone on in recent times, to do so now. I recognize the member for West Bay West.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to offer condolences to all families who have lost a family member since this House last met. And Mr. Speaker, there have been far too many. Every week there have been more and more funerals. I can't figure out a time that I've seen so many pass on. In my 69 years, and so close together. Just last month, Mr. Speaker, I had 5 cousins, first cousins and second cousins, in the morgue one time. One still left to be buried. 5, you have paid, Mr. Speaker, due respect to several outstanding community leaders and workers who have helped to shape so many aspects of our country positively. And so, no need for me to try to repeat what you have already so ably eulogized. But, Mr. Speaker, I do want to put on record the passing of Mr. Darrell Myers from Myers Thorpe, Alberga, who was not born in Cayman, was born in Jamaica, and came to Cayman many years ago and was part of that firm. Mr. Myers made a huge contribution to the legal fraternity, and through that, to the development of our islands. Mr. Speaker, our islands has done well over the years, in spite of our many problems as a growing country, developing state. And many people, like Mr. Myers, have contributed very positively to our successes. And so we must say thanks to people like him, and we do so now, for his work and what he did to help many, many others in our country. We pass on our condolences to his wife and family and his colleagues in the firm of Myers Thorpe, Alberga, and of course, the legal fraternity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I sit, maybe the member for East End is going to make note of it, of the late Ms. Ina Connor. She was something like 104, 105 years old, and I raised that because while we attended her funeral and did what we had to do, she was the caretaker. When my wife was born, she was the caretaker for care of my wife. So we had close connections over the year. She lived with my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and others in West Bay. And so we do put on record our condolences. She is the aunt of the minister, the member from East End.
Honorable Member for West Bay West, do you mind turning off your mic, please? Honorable Minister for Labor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ministry of Border Control, Labor, and Culture was saddened to hear the news of the passing of Morgan da Costa, a cherished member of the Cayman National Cultural Foundation, or CNCF. For over 25 years, Morgan da Costa dedicated his life to the promotion and preservation of Caymanian culture, leaving an indelible mark on our community through his passionate involvement in numerous CNCF programs, including the beloved Rundown. Mr. da Costa's contribution were not only significant, they were transformative. Throughout his tenure, he held various key positions, including treasurer, deputy chairman, and chairman of the Grants and Awards Committee. His commitment to fostering local talent and nurturing the arts has greatly enriched our cultural landscape and will continue to inspire future generations. Mr. Speaker, Morgan was a true champion of Cayman's rich heritage, as mentioned. His unwavering dedication to our culture and community has left a lasting legacy. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family during this difficult time. His passion for the arts and commitment to the CNCF will not be forgotten, and he will always hold a special place in the hearts of all who knew him. As we mourn his profound loss, we honor Morgan's legacy and his remarkable work with the CNCF. His contributions to our culture and community will resonate forever. I called a meeting, Mr. Speaker, with Morgan just a few months or a few weeks ago, and the meeting was about him taking up the chairmanship of the CNCF. I've known Morgan for a very long time from school. I often spoke with him, and he always spoke of Jeff Cresswell and him being the founder of CNCF and trying to ensure that he got his accolades. He was always calling about that. I saw him again at the late Dave Martin's gathering at the Harquail just a few weeks ago. And we spoke for a long time about the state of Cayman's culture. So Jean, my schoolmate and good friend, Oscar, and all the family, please accept my public condolences, and may his soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, also wanted to mention, as Minister of Culture, the unexpected passing of Alan Ortavio Miles, or affectionately known as Tabio. And many may know that he was considered one of the best musicians or drummers in the Cayman Islands. To his family, and especially his sister, Novia, who is the wife of Deputy Governor, please accept my public condolences on the passing of your brother. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to offer condolences on behalf of the official opposition and the PPM family to those who have lost someone over the last few months. As the Father of the House said, we have all felt the impact of the many, many passings that have happened over the last few months. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to say a few words about Morgan as well. And, you know, that one hit home because we were so similar in age and such history growing up together, and his two brothers, all considered very good friends, and Morgan, a dear friend and brother. I spent, at the beginning of the school year, we spent the school orientation for our sons together. His son, Hard, is in the same year as my son. And we laughed, we joked. He was so happy. Things were going so well. Business was going well. He was anticipating the arrival of his granddaughter. And he, you know, it really struck me. Life was just perfect at that moment. And we spoke again a couple of weeks later about business. He was trying to help me out with something. And that was the nature of Morgan, always willing to help, always there for you, always there to listen. We were in a couple of chat groups, and if there was ever an issue that came up, if anyone ever had a problem, Morgan was one of the first to respond to say, how can I help? And so, again, we want to say that to Jocelyn Hart, his daughter Kelsey, and her new baby, his new granddaughter, to Jean, my schoolmate, our schoolmate and good friend, and to Oscar, that our thoughts and prayers continue to be with them. Also, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to offer condolences on behalf of the official opposition and the PPM to Mr. Ken Aldamayo. Curtis, another schoolmate, you know, his son. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. As you said, Mr. Aldamayo, no matter where he traveled in the world, I remember him coming back from Australia and bouncing in, calling and saying he saw all these wonderful things in Australia that he thinks would be so good for Cayman. And it just struck me that wherever he went, for however long he went, his heart was still here in Cayman, and he was always looking for things to better the lives of our people and to better the Cayman Islands. So he certainly will be missed. To JC, Calhoun, friends and family, again, our condolences from the official opposition and the Progressives family, because we could call him that, I think, from the Progressives. The character of JC, one of the old school, one of the good guys. Story from me was, 1999, 98, somewhere around there. We were approached by JC. We were renting the McDonald's property, and JC came to us and said, you guys have to buy this. So JC, we don't think we can do it. He would not stop. He could put it on the open market. He could have made a lot more money in commission, because I think he even, unknown to us, may have taken a cut in his commission. But JC would not give up until my father and my brothers and I were able to buy that property. And that's the way he was, old school, the type of business that we don't see anymore. So he will certainly be missed by myself and my family, and we continue to keep them all in our thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. The Minister for Sport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would also like to offer condolences to the families of all those that have been mentioned who have passed away since our last sit-in. But for me, Mr. Speaker, two persons that stands out to me. One is Morgan DeCosta, schoolmate of mine, lifelong friend. We spent a lot of time at the Hartwell Theatre when I was there, doing the light and the sound. We had many days to laugh. We cursed each other, we joked with each other, and we are still friends. Like the Minister for Border Control alluded to a short while ago, the last time I actually spoke to him was at the tribute to another great person who made significant contribution to our country culturally, and from a heritage perspective, Mr. Dave Martins. That's when the last time I spoke with Morgan, and we were supposed to be getting together and discuss some stuff over coffee. Now, just a little segue into a song that Dave Martin did called That's Cayman. There was a portion in there where he speaks about Mr. Norberg patty and a jupina and a beef patty, and that was specifically because that's what Morgan told him he used to eat. So Dave integrated it into the song. But certainly it was a shock to me when I got the news, and you know, I'm not too sure if I'm actually over it yet because we just had that kind of relationship. So I just want to offer my condolences to his entire family on his sudden passing. And Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to mention my aunt, Ina Victoria Connor, who had passed away peacefully on Wednesday, September 4th, at the young and tender age of 105 at the Golden Age home in West Bay. Yes, sir, that's the Good Eastern Sea Breeze, sir. She was a Christian woman who gave selflessly of herself to the community of East End and to raising her family. She was dedicated to serving her church, and she served diligently and with passion, especially in the Women's Fellowship and the Christian Endeavor. And she was never one to shy away from sharing her belief in God. And I can just picture her now, sir. She had where her house was located on the main road in East End. There's an east window that looked towards the church, and she never missed anything passing the road. She never missed it. So if you did something wrong, that Old People Network would get very active. But she also loved singing those Sankey songs, songs like What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and Have You Any Room for Jesus? I can never, ever remember a time when I saw her angry. And she would probably have a lot to be angry about. All of the children she raised, all of the nephews and nieces that she fed lunch to in her kitchen. But she was a strong, resolute woman from the District of East End. I offer my condolences, and may her soul continue to rest in peace.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the recent sad news of the sudden passing of a dear special person, Morgan DaCosta, shocked us all a week ago. It is still surreal. Mr. Speaker, I rise to offer heartfelt condolences on behalf of my family and myself to the DaCosta family on this huge loss. The communities of Savannah Newlands is still in shock, and it hit me very hard. On Sunday morning, September the 29th, I received a call, was told that Morgan had passed. He was someone very special, was extremely involved in everything community. The DaCosta family is a giving and well-loved Savannah family. Like Morgan's dad, the late Mr. Hartman DaCosta, and his uncle, the late Uncle Cardinal DaCosta, who were all nation builders. They were all about ensuring they did everything possible to make the lives of others better. Morgan did just that. Our community was blessed to have Morgan, who followed in his father's footsteps. Giving and making light of everything was his trademark. He was always the life of the party. Mr. Speaker, I take this moment to send out heartfelt condolences to his beautiful wife, Jocelyn, his daughter, Kelsey, his son, Hart, his precious mom, Jeannie, his brothers, Jean Augustine and Oscar and their families, his aunts and uncles, to the DaCosta cousins who considered Morgan more like a brother than a cousin. I'm going to miss him just like each of you will. May his sweet soul rest in eternal peace. I also take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to send heartfelt condolences to the family of the late J.C. Calhoun. He was a dear and special friend to my family and myself. My sister Robin Hartman worked for him for over 25 years. His wife Addie and his office staff, we feel your loss. I too mourn his passing, and he loved big. Also to the Eldermeyer family of the late Mr. Kent Eldermeyer, another nation builder. Mr. Kent was loved, and we feel his loss as well. He and my dad were like two brothers. To Curtis, Monique, their mom and family, my heartfelt condolences and thoughts and prayers are with all those who have lost loved ones recently. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I recognize the Deputy Premier, Honourable Deputy Premier.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise briefly to wholeheartedly associate myself with the comments that you made in relation to J.C. Calhoun, who was my constituent. He was all that you mentioned and more. I agree with the Leader of the Opposition that he is from that stock that completely assimilated himself into Cayman and did everything that he could in his power to benefit and advance Cayman. I knew him to be a very blunt spoken person. Even when we debated the pros and cons of the COVID vaccine, in which he had very strong views, we always parted as friends, even with the strongest of exchanges. But that was JC. I was troubled and let his wife, his brother, and his sister that I met, that I was unable to attend his service due to my travel schedule. But his brother let me know and reminded me that JC was about getting things done for the country. So he said, if anybody would have understood your official duties, it would have been my brother. So don't worry about it, but thank you for your visit. In relation to Morgan DaCosta, I wholeheartedly agree with all members of the House that that really did shake all of us to the core. And my experience of just being overseas last week, for his brother, Gene DaCosta, who is the Cayman Islands representative to Asia, who was supposed to join me in Tokyo, I got the news from Gene directly, as he sought, Mr. Speaker, to apologize that he would be unable to fly from Singapore, where he resides now, to Tokyo. I assumed that, as you know, Mr. Speaker, with some of these official travels, there are snags, there are hotel registrations that sometimes go awry, or flights that are missed or delayed. And I assumed that Gene was calling me urgently for a mundane matter, only to discover when he called of the tragic news. And as I mentioned on the radio earlier this week, to show you the measure and the stock that they come from, Gene's focus was more so on derailing the trip for me than on where I thought he should place it, in terms of making sure he was laser focused on getting home to his family. But that's the DaCostas. It shocked me because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had lunch with Morgan and 2 other business persons as they sought to advocate for a difficulty they perceive in the trade and business license legislation. And although at that lunch, Morgan was the most vocal of the 3, although that he has gone, it's just given me even renewed passion, that I thought the point was valid, to make the amendment irregardless of him no longer being with us. Last but not least, there has been a passing in my family. My father's brother, my uncle, John Sheldon, also passed away last week. He was the type of uncle that wasn't the father figure type, but was more so the big brother type of uncle. I share very fond memories. I think it hit my father hard because to see his younger brother pass before him gave him a sense of his own mortality and life as it transitions on. So rest in peace, Uncle John. We'll miss you dearly, and I'm sure we'll have a service fitting in due course. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Premier. Thank all honorable members for the very sincere condolences you've extended on your behalf and on behalf of your families and constituents, and I do believe that they will be well received and with gratitude by all of those who were closest to the deceased. I wish to complete this session with a couple of verses from a poem which most of the members here will know I love well. It's called The Psalm of Life by Longfellow. Because I think the words are timeless and are so suited to occasions such as this. Because the psalm reminds us essentially to do what we can while we can. That is, while we are living and breathing, and talks about the legacy that we should all seek to leave as we, one by one, to depart this life. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Art is long, and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating, funeral marches to the grave. Lives of great men and women all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. We have today, at both ends of the spectrum, examples of the old saying that it's not the sickest that die the quickest, or the strongest that live the longest. Miss Ida was 105, prepared for the inevitable. Morgan struck down in the full stride of life, full of passion and energy and life itself. That reminds us all, it certainly reminds me of how tenuous this hold on life we have really is, and that it serves us all well to do the best we can, to do the most we can, to be as kind as we can while we have that ability. For none of us know when it will be our turn and our number will be called and someone will be eulogizing us. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Amen. I have been asked by the Honourable Minister for Tourism and Ports to provide him with an opportunity to make a brief announcement, following which I think we will take the luncheon break.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sorry, just one moment, Honourable Minister. Madam Clerk, The other agenda item, raising of matters of privilege. I just want to get through all of that before I get to. Yeah. It's a 5 seconds.
Raising of matters and of privileges.
None.
Government business.
None.
Other business.
Honourable Minister, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honored that you gave me the privilege to highlight a very important academic tournament that is happening as we speak. It's the KPMG Brain Bowl, where they have a tournament right now at the Hotel Indigo that brings the brightest of minds together of young people from the various schools to test their knowledge on things of life and general history and politics and technology. I had the opportunity this morning to go and see it on behalf of the government, and I'm quite blown away by their expansive knowledge field. The schools that were involved is the Calvary Baptist Christian Church, Cayman Academy, Cayman Islands International School, Cayman Prep and High School, CF School, Clifton Hunter High School, Grace Christian Academy, John Gray, Lehman E. Scott from Cayman Brack, St. Ignatius, Triple C, Wesleyan Christian Academy, year 12 dual enrollment. I just wanted to take this opportunity for thanking the advisors, the organizers for putting this on, particularly that of Ms. Deanne Blackman and the team at KPMG for giving these kids such an awesome opportunity. And if those of you who have the time today, the final rounds will be this afternoon after lunch. So congratulations to those kids again. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I just want to personally take this opportunity to congratulate all the children from last night's graduation at John Gray. It was truly an honor to watch them all take the next step in their educational journey. And from what I see, I'm looking forward to retirement because I think our future will be in very comfortable and capable, educated hands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, we will now take the luncheon suspension and we'll return at 3 p.m.